to be separated is policy report number 5, which is Councillor Carr had requested that one. That's on the CD1 rezoning for 180 Kingsway Rise Alliance. Councillor Carr.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do have concerns about whether or not this project is ready for referral to public hearing. So I do have some questions of staff, if that's okay. One of my concerns has to do with, it talks in the recommendation about referring plans received October 7th. And I believe that there were some significant changes to the plans at the last public open house. Those changes included the removal of the artist studio, the removal of all rental housing that I believe significantly affect the project. So, number one, is that accurate? Plans received October 7th, there is a change in that?
Brenda Poskin, Acting General Manager for Community Services. Thank you for your question, Councillor. I'm going to ask Kent Roro or Yardy, our planners who are working on this particular project, to answer that specific question.
Good morning, Council. I'm Yardy, the zoning planner for the project. The plan submitted on October 7th changed with respect to what some of the areas were allocated towards what uses. The actual layout of the building hasn't changed. So what was altered was the conversion from the artist production space off of 10th Avenue to commercial retail area, but the building hasn't changed. And also the 15 stir units that were located on the second and third floor of the tower that fronts on Kingsway were converted to strata units. But again, the floor plate hasn't changed, nor has the tower changed.
Okay. I have a few more questions. I have also some concerns regarding those plans and the rendering of the image of the tower, the height of the buildings, and whether or not that's, I mean, there's been some questions in the public about the accuracy of that, and if that would affect the outcome of the public hearing if it was inaccurately rendered.
Well, staff have done a thorough analysis of the plans submitted by the developer, and they've checked them against the district schedule and against the general way by which staff calculate height and FSR. And they do have a clear number by which they consider the height to measure up to, which is 215 feet. So from a staff perspective, there's no ambiguity with respect to how tall that tower is. The staff report does lay that information out thoroughly, we hope, and there will be enough information for public hearing to get into any other aspects that you have with respect to that.
My third question has to do with the impact of having changed, maybe not the building itself, but the internal use of the building, on the accuracy of the recommendation of director of planning regarding, and the piece of that report regarding public input. That if the internal use of the building has changed significantly, that any collection of public input may not be accurate any longer. There may be a need for further public consultation.
Well, we considered that carefully ourselves, actually, and to meet that need, we held a third open house on January 17th, where we laid out for the community the changes with respect to those two uses on site. Remember, those two uses represent a relatively small percentage of the overall FSR of the project as well. We did collect comments back from the community. We asked specific questions around the removal of the arts production space and the stir units, and in exchange for a community mandated contribution, and what the community's viewpoints were with respect to that CAC contribution and where they think that should go. We do have that information, and we've included it into the staff report.
What about the previous surveys that were done, that were based on a previous internal use concept? Would those be rendered inaccurate, do you think?
No, as I said, the public consultation process has been quite detailed in the staff report about what the communities felt at every stage along this, I think, over a year-and-a-half process. There's been 3 public meetings, plus the over 350 comment sheets coming through the city's email rezoning application website. Each time the application is changed, it goes up on the web, and people comment on it, and there's been some, as you said, significant milestone open houses to show that in a more real way or tangible way to the neighborhood. So we feel we've covered the basis of it.
Okay, one final question. Back again to the rendering of the plan in the proposal itself, and whether or not the height is accurately rendered. If it was proven that it wasn't accurately rendered, does that hold us in any kind of legally liable situation?
I'm not sure about the legal aspects of that, but I can tell you that height is measured in a typical way throughout all projects from a base case scenario, like plane underneath the building. In this case, the technical staff have used the same methodology they've used for every other project in the city to come up with the height for that tower, 250 feet. If there's been an error made, we certainly want to know that as much as anyone else does as well. But it has been checked on numerous occasions because we too have been very conscious and sensitive around the neighborhood's concern around height and wanting to be absolutely certain about how high it is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carr and Councillor Meigs.
Just further to Councillor Carr's comments, Mr. Mayor, I would like Council's all received correspondence statement from Mr. Stephen Bovis, who is present here, who does his own computer renderings and frequently challenge the staff assessment. So I would be appreciative, by me at least, if staff would conclusively report at the next meeting about why there is a discrepancy, if any, between the staff renderings and Mr. Bovis's renderings, so that we can put that issue to bed as quickly as possible. So I think that we need to take those renderings on directly and determine which are correct, and if there's an error in one set or the other, we need to know why there's an error in that set. So
Mr. Arnold.
Taking that work, Councillor Mr. Ball has shared his model with us, and work is underway, so we'll have that full.
in fact, I don't know if it would prejudice the hearing, but it would be useful to have that report circulated to the public as soon as possible, if it's straightforward, so that we're not detained by an unnecessary distraction if there is one in the interim.
Thanks, Councillor Meigs. Councillor Affleck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Carr sort of addressed many of my questions. I guess I'm trying to figure out the process here from a point of view of public input and at what point we should be going to the public hearing. At this stage, there seems to be a lot of anger in the community about the changes that have happened. And so I'm wondering if you can, first of all, tell me what you experienced at the January meeting and what kind of input you were getting, specifically, positive or negative.
Thank you for that question. It has been a controversial project since the beginning, I think, and the January 17th open house was no different from that. We had about 180 people sign in to the open house. The comments received from that specific evening were 75% in opposition to the project, 25% in support of it. That is slightly different from what we got from the overall feedback from the community, which is around 34% in support and 61% as opposed. That's the citywide response that was gotten back. We followed the procedure by which to speak to the neighborhood about this. This is the first project that's been come through since the Mount Pleasant Community Plan was adopted in 2010, and that has certainly raised some concerns for the neighborhood as well. And we'll be bringing all of that to you in the form of a public hearing so you can debate the issues for and against.
The intention of public consultation prior to going to a public hearing is so that we don't feel like we're making decisions on the fly in a public hearing. And so I'm worried that we haven't done our due diligence at this stage, that I feel confident that whenever the public hearing is, because basically after today we can't talk about it if we approve this. I'm worried that we haven't done our proper due diligence with the community in order for them to feel comfortable. Whether or not it's a good development or a bad development is the issue. Clearly, when you talk about those statistics, the community is opposed to it. The majority of the community seems to be opposed to it. To me, there seems to be communications breakdown, whether or not it's because of the height or what's happening on the inside of the building. And I'm wondering if that's unusual in your experience in the city when you're working through the public process before it goes to public hearing.
I wouldn't say it's unusual in respect to any project that is a new intervention into a neighborhood that hasn't seen change for a while. So with respect to that aspect, it's not unusual. I think my personal instincts are that the plan is the thing that the neighborhood is most concerned about, and whether that reflects what they saw as their 2 or 3 year process to develop the plan. This is one of the 3 sites within Mount Pleasant that were permitted to be somewhat different than the rest of the neighborhood, and therein lies the conflict. The plan didn't outline what the maximum height or density could be, it suggested that that should be discovered through a rezoning exercise, which is exactly what's happened. So the applicant has submitted the rezoning, we've gone through the process of evaluating it. There is a policy framework by which this can be considered by council, and the arguments which spelled out for and against within the staff report.
But there clearly seems to be some sort of communication breakdown. I mean, they feel like things are pushed through without their proper neighborhoods.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. I think it's unfair to Councillor Affleck. We may not need to do it, ask that if they've done their job properly. These identified shortcomings, we didn't know what those are.
Thanks for that, Councillor Meggs, and fair point, Councillor Affleck. It's not
I think
on staff to defend themselves in this situation.
I'm not saying
position for that. So,
I think Councillor Carr addressed the specific issues. It's more about the process in which we as a council have to make decisions, and I don't think we should be put in a situation where we feel like we're making a decision at a public policy meeting that is not the right decision for a community. So I think the questions I'm asking are relevant and important for the community that I'm hearing from a lot of right now. So, thank you.
thank you, Councillor Louis.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. What I would like to do is just go through a bit of history on this project. Perhaps that might be helpful for the councillors and those that are listening today on what sort of process there has been. This project has been in stream now for at least 2-3 years now, and if staff could just outline the number of public meetings that are being undertaken, both by the developer that we know of and the city process, and whatever adjustments that are being made to the project from start to finish as a result of input that we've received from, or they've received from the community.
I think the application was first submitted in the the beginning of 2010, so we're almost 2 years into the process. And it came in at a point when the neighborhood plan was just completing its structure and proceeding on the council for adoption. So the developer was aware of the directions that were laid out within the Mount Pleasant community for that area, specifically for that site. They submitted an application which was significantly a taller tower than we have today, and there were 3 public open house events plus a open kind of forum by which the community can speak to council and staff through the website. At each one of those open house events, there's been changes to the application to decrease its size to some degree or change its portions of its use, which is what happened on January 17th. So the project's been massaged and made smaller from its original application to what it is today in front of council. And the Mount Pleasant community is the policy framework by which that can be considered. This is one of those 3 sites in Mount Pleasant where higher buildings and higher densities can be considered, and the argument is laid out as to whether this is the appropriate response or not.
So if I understand you correctly, there is a Mount Pleasant plan. It's consistent with the plan. This is a new Mount Pleasant plan. It's not an old plan. In fact, the developer, if I understand correctly, came in with an application prior to the completion of the plan and revised the plan, their submission to better meet or match what the intent of the Mount Pleasant plan was, ultimately adopted by council. And then subsequent to that, there was 3 meetings, public meetings, that public were given the opportunity to engage and give input. The developer then made changes to their development proposal after receiving that input, and that's why we find ourselves here today. After all those meetings, 2 years worth of process, and council is now being presented with a submission by the developer, supported by staff, because of it meeting the plan and the process that it's gone through. Is that fair? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks, Councillor Louis. And I have no further questions. I'll call for a motion, a referral motion. Councillor Louis to move that. And all those in favor of referral of this item? Any opposed? Councillors Carr and Affleck opposed. And that motion carries. So we are on to rising from Committee of the Whole.